Life gets ill, homie, we got bills. More than one kid, a boss we could kill. Aches and pains all hurt, we take pills. Dennis gotta use a drill.
Hello everybody and welcome back to PodCats LG. This is our second episode and our kind of third part. And we are talking about housing today. So if you want to know about housing in Los Gatos, affordable housing in Los Gatos, this notion that we're going to have to add more units eventually to Los Gatos, I know we're going to probably get into just a little bit about the general plan and specific plans, and it's a big subject, but I want you to stick with us because we have some amazing guests today, and we are going to be dissecting the housing question here in Los Gatos. Okay, so first up, let me tell you this. In a few minutes, I've got Susan Barnett and I've got Michael Kilkenny, and we'll introduce them in a minute, but we've got a second set that we're going to bring in. But for the moment, to my right here, I've got Ali Miano, and Ali Miano is a lecturer at Stanford University and is the commissioner on the Complete Streets and Transportation Commission. I have to read this. And the education director for the Anti-Racist Coalition here in Los Gatos.
Anti-Racism Coalition.
Anti-Racism Coalition. I got all that right?
Yes.
Thank you, Ali, for being here. We really appreciate it. Over here, we've got Tony Alarcon, who is a resident of Los Gatos, resident at large, and also a director, or an officer, for the Los Gatos Masonic Lodge. Yes. Longtime residents, both of you. And of course, then I've got my partner in crime over here, Catherine Summers, the executive director at the Chamber of Commerce here in Los Gatos. And I am Brian Bernasconi, a resident and concerned citizen and real estate broker here in town, and also on the board of directors at the Chamber of Commerce. I think I covered all the bases.
I think you got it all.
Okay, so stick with us because this is going to get good.
Yeah.
Do you have a question that you would like to start with?
I do, and it kind of follows from our last episode. You know, when we were talking we had Rob Moore, Kiley Clark, we talked to Lee Fagot, and so got some opinions about what affordable housing meant to them. But I think I missed really going straight to the question of what does affordable housing mean to you? And so I think I just wanted to start with kind of like, just really one take. What does affordable housing in Los Gatos mean to you, look like to you, Ali?
It looks to me like there is a place for all income brackets and people of all backgrounds to live, and everyone is welcome. Certainly, in a town that's so far got about 28,000, 30,000 people, you can't expand to 1 million. Yeah. But you can make room for everybody. When I grew up here, I had friends who, yes, they were very well off, and also friends who's, maybe came from a single parent household where their mom was a teacher, and they could live in Los Gatos back in the 60s here.
So you moved here in the 60s?
Yeah, 65.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Been around a while.
And you don't think it looks like that anymore?
No, it's very hard, right? I'm in the teaching profession myself, and yet, we had to be a dual income family and, scrape and claw our way back into town, basically, to be able to afford a fixer-upper, that was in really bad condition back in 97. And, it was not easy to even to get that place. We got in by the skin of our teeth. So when you think about, just regular working folks, teachers, police officers, and what about we have so many salons in town, the people who, support, your hairdresser, or the people who paint your nails. We've got tons of nail salons in town. There should be room for all kinds of folks to live here, and not just, the uber rich, which since the Silicon Valley boom, that has kind of been, what you've seen more and more of, and houses being expanded, beyond belief, people buying little bungalows like the one we bought in 97, but instead of, leaving them intact to try to preserve some of Los Gatos history and, just the beauty and charm of the town, building them out to really exaggerated proportions.
I just want to add that this affordability issue exists not only in home ownership but also in the rental stock here, right? I mean, you mentioned owning a home, but I mean, people can't hardly afford to live here and rent either.
Yeah,
okay.
True.
And Tony, I'm going to get to you in a sec, although I had one more question on this. Is why, so 1997, I mean, you knew it was going to be hard to scrape and get by to come back here. Mm-hmm. What compelled you to really want to come back here and live, even though you knew it was going to be maybe kind of hard?
Probably a little bit of a couple of things. One thing was we lived actually in a part of San Jose with a Los Gatos address. And, our kids came to school downtown at St. Mary's. We're always coming to the market. We're always coming to St. Joseph's Hill to go for runs. So we're always driving here. So we wanted to live here. The funny thing was that once we moved in, we were so busy renovating this old house that we didn't have time to go to the market or go for a run or do all these other things that we had enjoyed. So that was kind of one of the ironies. And then the other reason, probably a little bit of the grass is always greener, right? I grew up in a northern part of Los Gatos where I went to Westmont High School. And so I was in the Campbell Union School District. Mm-hmm. And now we lived, near Lee High School. And so either my daughter was going to go to Lee or we were going to move. Mm-hmm. And so I thought, I presumed that Los Gatos would be a better school for my kids. And so
has it turned out that way?
I mean,
we don't have to get into it.
That's another podcast.
Yeah, that's definitely another podcast.
That's another podcast.
But before we switch to Tony, just say, I didn't hear, I heard your story and about the affordability problem, mm-hmm. Which I don't know who would argue with that, but I didn't hear the answer of what does affordable housing mean to you? Like we've talked so much, this conversation has gotten so broad that my head starts to swim. And so I'm interested in drilling down on some of these specific answers. Like, what does it look like to you?
In terms of specifics, I'm not an expert in housing, but I know that if, teachers and police officers and, store clerks and folks like that can't live here, number one, they're driving in from a long distance, and that contributes to the valley's pollution if they're even living somewhere in the valley, and so I think it's incumbent on the town to have programs to help people either live here or get here affordably. Provide transportation passes. There was talk for a while, and I worked on this years ago. Trying to get affordable housing built nearby behind the El Gato penthouse. And there were actually a lot of residents in favor. And somehow, the if you'll pardon me, not in my backyard folks, won the day.
Meaning that there's people out there who don't want affordable housing or low-income housing near their more expensive houses. They feel and would the argument be then that those affordable units are going to bring their prices down or create some sort of undesirable situation in their neighborhood, or a combination of those, or something else?
Maybe that's what some folks think. And yet there were, I canvassed houses. I talked to people, and there was support. Yeah. I was surprised.
Well, but there was also opposition.
Yeah, but the support was pretty good. And somehow in life, the folks who say no seem to win the order of the day. So we just need to keep pushing for more yeses.
The folks who say no are usually the ones who are willing to come to the meetings and put the word in. If they're a yes vote, then they tend to stay at home and remain silent, is what I'm finding when we talk about these things.
Tony's itching over here.
I'm sorry. I'm going to let Tony talk, but I'm going to push back on that just a little bit and say that, no, actually, a lot of us, like the Los Gatos Anti-Racism Coalition, we regularly attend town council meetings, school board meetings, planning commission meetings, and so forth, trying to support a more positive, progressive, forward-thinking agenda.
Yeah. Part of my point there, Allie, was I think that more people should get involved. And so if you think that something should or shouldn't happen in this town, there's plenty of opportunity to speak up. There's our forum here, but there's a dozen other, including town council meetings that happen twice a month. Okay, that's just my little plug for civil responsibility. Tony, what do you got?
So I come from a background that I think I have an appreciation for low-income housing. I have family members that currently live in low-income housing, and I fought for Ditto's Lane to develop it differently. I have a background in real estate. I too am a real estate broker. I've done land development. My smallest large project was larger than the phase 1 of the North 40. And so with Ditto's Lane, there was an access problem. The town had torn down a workforce bungalow, which was I think it was 8 or 10 rooms, a duplex, and a single family home. The problem was the easement to that property only allowed for one residential unit. And so the solution would have been, if I was on town council, there's 2 paths. I proposed to build 8 single family homes with ADUs, provide 4 low-income housing units and 4 market rate units, but those market rate units would be sold for a mortgage only at the debt service, and the profit would be deferred until later with no interest. So we have a really creative town. We have bright minds in town, and we need to put our heads together, because one thing my personal belief is, and I've seen this and I've heard it from people, low-income housing keeps poor people poor. It does provide a roof over the head. It does not give them or afford them the opportunity to create multi-generational wealth, the transfer of that real estate to a family member when they pass, if they don't qualify under the low-income wage earning guide. And so I believe there's the next generation coming, which is more workforce housing, where part of that house cost will be subsidized, it'll be deferred, it'll be used as an inflation hedge, a debt instrument like a treasury, held by foundations, where if the house costs $1 million to build, that foundation and its supporters will take $400,000 of a silent second in equity, no interest payment. It just gets paid back when the house is eventually sold. So, I want to call on our citizens to think differently and come up with more creative ways. Myself, I first moved to Los Gatos in '91 and lived in an apartment with a friend. And then I moved into Willow Glen. I shared a 4-bedroom house with 5 roommates. And that's how we made it affordable. So that's what affordable to me is. It's not necessarily, you're not going to live in a 2,000 square foot house. It's getting creative and finding a way to work together to find a way to live. It could be someone renting a room in their house, creating private access through SB9 or something of that nature to create more affordable options, but not necessarily low income, again, because of those constraints. I think we do need low income housing, but that should be supplemented with a different product type. Like the old Victorians, when they had 6 units in a Victorian, and you had a 1-bedroom and a bathroom, and maybe 1 couple lived in it, right? So
you're really kind of referring to what they call middle housing. Is that kind of what?
That's part of the solution. It's a multifaceted approach that we need to take.
Okay. Now, going back to the actual affordable housing, because of course the state is mandating that we build 831, I think the number is exactly, of below market rate housing. So where do you put those in Los Gatos that is going to be accepted by the whole community? Like, where is that on the boulevard? Is it one 5-story building? You put them all there? I mean, I don't know. What do you think is best on that?
My experience from my family members, when you build that type of a product, they live in senior low-income housing. 75% of the residents are not from California. They're from out of the area, actually out of country living there. So we don't solve the local immediate need. That's one concern that I do have personally. I think we need to disperse those and intermix the low-income with market rate housing. Low-income housing was originally, if you remember, it was sold to us being, we're going to solve for teachers and police and fire. Well, it's grown well beyond that, and it's this big issue, as you referenced, Brian. So narrowing it down, if we can find some developments, partner with the school district, partner with the church, build housing, put police, fire, teachers in there to live and make it more affordable. My daughter, who just graduated college, is living in my cottage because it's really expensive to live in town. And so that's a rental cottage that we had a long time ago. So that's one solution. The annexing from the Los Gatos Mountains into town and filling in some of those pockets can work. But developing a 500-unit low-income single development, that's not something I think makes sense. We've seen that not work in Chicago and some of the crimes around it. We have seen things work where you'll have a developer that's required to build low-income housing. Specifically, we need to avoid mistakes like with the North 40. The North 40 was given a by right designation.
What does that mean?
A by right designation gives the developer the right to develop the project in a manner which bypasses ordinances and low-income housing formulas set, voted upon, and passed by the town.
So they got a pass, basically.
They got a pass on building more than 40 non-age restricted affordable housing units.
How did they get that pass?
They got the pass because the committee doing that,
the committee that was associated with the town committee, okay,
with the North 40 and the planning commission, though being well intended, did not have life experience on you got a big developer, Grosvenor, right? $19 billion company coming against this little town. And by giving the by right designation, the developer, well, we can then do this and that'll make it quicker, fast track. Oh, miss that little asterisk that says we don't have to give you the affordable housing. So we lost more than 40 non-age restricted low-income units in that could have served as teachers and people that work in town.
And this was just, in your opinion, this was just an oversight that slipped through the cracks.
I would like to think it was an oversight.
Oh, you think there's something more? Intrigue.
Intrigue. There was a change at the school level of the superintendent, and I'll just let that speak for itself. That was part of it, and I think sometimes the biggest strength in a person, including myself, is knowing what we don't know and asking for help. And I think it would behoove the town, when we take on these types of projects, to bring somebody with domain expertise in development that's not in the developer pocket, that developers not giving town council members rides to their homes and things like that, and really separating church and state.
And is there nobody on call that fits that role at this point? I mean, throughout this entire housing conversation over the past many years, is that person not in the mix, to your knowledge?
I think Matthew Hughes, who is on our town council, is very experienced, has great domain expertise, and is a definite advantage to our town.
Okay.
I'm a champion of him. He's a bright individual.
Interesting.
That is interesting. When you think, Allie, of affordable housing, for example, do you see maybe units being built downtown near where you live, or do you see a high rise out on the boulevard? I mean, the boulevard I keep coming back to because that's, it seems so prime for development, but I'm not thinking the way you are. So it's a great conversation, but where do you see it happening?
We do have a lot of those. We have apartment buildings interspersed with, some of those old Victorians that are like, the old boarding houses and divided up where, people can live in them. And I'm, completely in favor of that. And I would like to say that, you asked me what is affordable housing to me, and obviously it's got to include also the people who are, now we say, unhoused, homeless, houseless. I like what Trevor Noah says, which is, you can change the name, but the problem is still there. So, as long as we don't mean any of these terms in a stigmatizing way, I think they're all fine. And, you can ride your bike or take a walk on any, path, or, just take a look on the freeway and you will see encampments, in town. And in fact, I said I went to Westmont High School. One of my buddies from Westmont, I think she was from my year, is, one of the houseless residents that you will see around town, former bank teller, right? But if you don't have a home, it's hard to get rehired as a bank teller somewhere. No. And, so these are the kinds of things that we need to be thinking about.
Okay, so you just answered. So you think Los Gatos, as our community, should be thinking about this and should be thinking about housing some of the unhoused and...
Definitely.
Okay, and why is that the responsibility of Los Gatos? If Los Gatos is kind of, yeah, I'm playing devil's advocate here, but I'm just saying, you know, a lot of people I think have moved here and they've thought, okay, I've gotten away from, I left San Francisco. I don't want to see any more of that homeless anymore. I want to come and live where it's pristine and beautiful and clean and everything else. And so now all of a sudden you're saying, no, we
I'm
need
saying it's actually not. You can see, trash piles on the side of the freeway and right here in town, right on 17. And you say, well, it's everyone's responsibility. I grew up here, I was raised here, and those are the kinds of values I was raised with. You help out your fellow human being, you do what you can, and when we help each other, we're all better for it versus just ignoring the less fortunate or people who've taken a downturn in life.
Yeah, that's the bubble, right? We live in that bubble.
Well, and I hear you saying that, Allie, and my immediate thought is, are you able to get traction with that narrative? I mean, does anybody? I'm sorry to say it, but does anybody care about that anymore?
Yes, we have 30 resident homeless in our town that are longtime residents here, and shout out to Nan and Joe. You guys are awesome because you guys feed the homeless every Tuesday at the church across from Steamers. We do have people that come in from out of town, but generally the homeless population there does police themselves. I actually called Caltrans, the Alberta Way, Highway 917 entrance, headed to San Jose. Took them 6 months to get this cleaned up, both the left side of the entrance and then the right side. So I actually did do that.
But getting cleaned up doesn't necessarily solve the unhoused problems.
Many of them, Brian, they've said they don't want, they're happy the way they are with their lives the way they are. It's a personal choice. And some do want to get housed, right? Because for homeless, we're diverging from low-income housing quite a bit, but it's recent homelessness that was just maybe a temporary financial setback. They're easy to plug back into society. Somebody that's been homeless for a longer time. You have the mentally ill. That's when we closed Agnew's during the Reagan era, when they pulled that support back from the state level. And then you have people that just want that lifestyle. We have multimillionaires in town that are homeless and choose to be. And so that's their own particular
You say
right.
choose to be, but I'm guessing there's got to be maybe a less than conventional mental state that comes along with that.
At times, yes. I it's a small town. I approached somebody that I saw walking. I live on Johnson Avenue in the Creek, and he was casing houses. Approached him the next day downtown and said, "Hey, you're new in town. How do you know? Small town. By the way, you shouldn't be walking behind the creek. How about, do you have family? How'd you get homeless? How do you know I'm homeless? I'll pay for your bus ticket. I'll get you transportation to your family. I'll give you money. I'll help you. I'll put you on a plane. How can we help?" And he didn't want help. Yeah. But I want to come back to low-income housing, because one thing I think is being missed in the calculation from the town, and since we're sending out so many surveys nowadays, there are a lot of people that do support teachers and public servants and subsidize their rents. We rented to a teacher $500 below market rate of our cottage for over 10 years. But that doesn't hit the statistical radar. But I believe there are many people in town that are doing something similar. And that's something I would like to see the town do a survey to actually see, are you subsidizing somebody to help them afford housing, and is it not on the statistical data?
Is there any way to incentivize people with units to do that? I mean, does the town have a mechanism that they could incentivize homeowners to offer that type of housing at below market?
We should certainly create if I was part of the government here in town, I would create a portal for people to log in, and it would be where you could have a teacher, if you want a teacher, police, fire. Maybe there's a passion. Maybe their father was a fireman, something of that nature. But create a portal where we can create a housing stock to make it affordable. And it's these type of innovative ideas that we need to help be part of the solution, because it's multifaceted.
I'm thinking I'm getting up onto my 20 minutes here. Shannon, is that probably correct?
Oh, we got a little time, actually.
Okay, we'll keep going.
And Tony, how do you feel about, let's see, the multicultural question, or shall I say I don't know, we said it last time, I don't like really saying it, but I guess it's what it is. Like the black and brown question. Are you okay with, do you like to have more cultural diversity in town, or does that not matter?
Everyone's going to say yes to that question.
Maybe.
But everybody's going to say yes to that question. If you say no to that question, you're going to be a complete pariah. You can't say.
But I'll answer this question very specifically. Okay, my friend Paul Scott, shout out to Paul. He's a champion for LGBT in Los Angeles. Put the strip down Hollywood Boulevard. He came out to me on National Coming Out Day before 85 was even finished. We were walking down it. I had to keep his secret for 10 years. And I'm glad that we've come a long way. And I actually think our town is more inclusive than it's being given credit to. I personally do not like the language in the 2040 general plan.
The language? What's the language?
The language is environmental justice is expanded to consider racial, social, and environmental justice. Like many other communities in the United States, Los Gatos has a history which includes racial injustice. And I don't necessarily agree with that. Being in real estate, the last 5 years, we've seen the demographics have changed in California in the last 5 to 10 years, especially. I grew up in Santa Clara. I already grew up in a very diverse, neighborhood. My best friend's from Compton. I mean, I've got, and if you look at who's moving into town and who's buying real estate, it's naturally progressing in that matter. You have to go back to our history and what the demographics looked like in California, and it's changing, and we as a town are slowly changing. But I don't necessarily agree that we're a racist town. I don't think that whatsoever. I think there's a lot of good hearts, and I just don't agree with that language.
You did use one good word there, which Allie might agree with, which was slowly.
Yes.
Do you think it's moving too slowly?
Yes. And I would say, Tony, I agree with everything you had to say up until just now.
Everybody, I want to say thank you so much for tuning into PodCats. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen or watch. I'm down here at the Hardcore Barber in Los Gatos, and just want to take a second to give a shout out to our sponsors and our supporters. First of all, I want to say thank you to KCAT for having us down, for recording the show, for helping us with all the technical stuff. KCAT has been absolutely amazing. Secondly, I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce has been a huge supporter. They've also sponsored the show, and so we want to just tell you that they're doing an amazing job. If you're not involved with the Chamber, you should be. Thirdly, I want to say thank you to Brian and Dan Real Estate. Brian and Dan, Silicon Valley Real Estate. Dan has been a huge fan of PodCats, and we're also sponsoring the show. And lastly, then, the brokerage that we work for, which is Christie's International Real Estate Sereno, formerly known as Sereno Group, has been a massive sponsor. Everybody should be using Sereno. Christie's International Sereno, the best brokerage here in Los Gatos, bar none. Thank you again for tuning in. We really appreciate it. And now we're going to get you back to the show. Up until the point where he said he doesn't think that there's a racist element here. If I'm misquoting you.
Yeah, if you're an anti-racist, you know that racism is everywhere. We grow up with it. We grow up with these things even before we know we're growing up with them. So yes, of course, there's a racist element here. Los Gatos is part of a country that had, how many centuries of slavery? 400 years of slavery. It's part of a country that used to belong to Mexico, and before it was belonged to Mexico, it was territories stolen by Spain, and before that, we're still trying to figure out who were the original inhabitants of the area, that we now enjoy. So yes, we have a very racist past. It's in our DNA, and to me, it's our responsibility to investigate, interrogate that history and understand it so that we can have a better present and a better future. So of course we want people of all kinds, in town, whether you're speaking, racially, socially, culturally, economically. Thank you. It enriches the town. It enriches our experience. If we're all mainly one color or if we all are, you know, you may say, oh, well, no, there's a lot of diversity. I have a friend with this background or that background. But if they have to act and think and do exactly like you to gain your acceptance, so that they have kind of divested themselves of some of their roots, then you know, I question that relationship.
And you've always been passionate about this subject? I mean,
yeah, you know, it's part of my history as a you know, Los Gatos, right? I grew up. I went to St. Mary's School, and we had a you know, I'm going to completely date myself here. 1968, our second grade teacher, Mrs. Goldsboro, if you're out there, you're still very much loved and appreciated. And she was a young woman and a firebrand, and you know, two items that were in the news quite a bit then were civil rights and, you know, the discovery that cigarettes could cause cancer. So so we learned all about those things in our second grade classroom, and so I credit her, and of course, you know, my parents also reinforcing those values at home, you know, with so yes, even though racism is in our DNA, I think I'm an anti-racist from way back, and it came from, you know, being a part of this town, going to a school that was a Catholic school, yes, multi-ethnic, and yet, you know, when I think back, the kids in my class who had Spanish surnames like Alarcon, you know, if you asked them what their nationality was, because that's how we would talk about ourselves back then, you know, you would say, oh, I'm Italian, or I'm Irish, or German, or whatever. They didn't say what their background was. And I don't know if, you know, they didn't know, or if their parents told them not to say, you know, because it wasn't quite okay yet.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a little teeny break here. It goes fast. I mean, there's so much to talk about. But for the moment, we're going to just wrap up this segment so the people either listening or watching can take a little break, turn this part off and come back. But you got to come back to hear the rest of Tony and Allie, and we're going to continue this conversation. So please click onto the next part and watch or listen. And we are PodCats LG. We'll be back in just a minute. You guys go get a break for 1 second?
Yep.
Okay, we'll be back in a sec. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Now that we're off, do you guys are we hitting on some subjects that are interesting, or do you think we're missing
Interesting
something?
to
Wait a
me.
second.
I'm
Hold on a
wondering if I'm
second.
boring you guys.
No, you're not boring us.
No, not at all.
The cameras are still rolling.
Okay.
Does anybody need to actually take a break?
No.
No, let's
You need
just
to take a break.
That way we'll get
Then
used to it.
then can we make that our? So we're back. Thanks for joining us. And while we were taking our break, am I okay to just roll here, Shan? While we were taking our break, the fake break that we just took.
And we only have about 15 minutes left. With
20
these
more
two.
minutes. We got 20,
Okay,
23
okay.
minutes. Yeah. You asked the question, what? Because I want this. I don't want to do it off camera. I want to do it on camera.
I asked the question of, are we touching on what you feel that, you know, you came today, you had some things to say, you obviously were inspired to come and talk to us at all, so what are we missing?
Were you doing this off camera because you were hoping to get secret, like, real answers from everybody? Is that why
I
you were
do
doing
want
it
to
off
get
camera?
real. I love
So
both of
how
our-
about we just
I have
get
a
the
real
real
answer.
answer?
Okay.
I have so my life experience. My great-grandfather was an indentured servant, brought from Spain by the Catholic priest to work in the sugarcane fields in Hawaii. I'm fourth generation. And one thing I see today is, you know, it takes multiple generations to advance your family. So when my first home I bought over the phone because I knew I could afford it, and it was behind the Burbank Theater where they did adult films. It wasn't the best of areas. The next house I bought, I moved up 2.5 years later in Willow Glen. During that time, I'd done a couple investments in real estate, made some additional money, bought my first house and stretched to get on Johnson Avenue. And so the one thing is that I think it does take multiple generations to advance. It's not going to be you come to this country and first generation, boom, you're successful. Typically not. I think it takes 3 or 4. And so that's why when I say slowly too, we're making advancements. I think people that have been here in California, they're advancing and they're making progress. We can make a little bit more. Personally, living on Johnson Avenue, I would have liked our town to appeal the RHNA numbers like some of the other cities did. If you go to losaltosresidents.org, you can see some great information for pros and cons on the RENA numbers. It's balanced. We have a fire issue in Los Gatos. We ranked worse than Paradise did before their horrific fire. So we're going to put 4,000 units in. What are the residents up in the hills on Johnson, where I live? We're never going to get out of town if a catastrophic fire breaks out.
Because of just the gridlock.
Yeah.
The gridlock. You can't get out during school.
Yeah.
I mean, let alone. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration. Coming back to your question, where do we put the housing? If we want to drive down the boulevard and have a wall of cement and not see the hillside, our beautiful hillsides, I think we need to look at other areas a little bit more dispersed and spread them out and do strategic site planning, not just, this side will work down the boulevard and here's 500 units or 800 units of affordable housing.
And again, to interject the RENA numbers, because for our listeners out there,
The what numbers, Catherine?
the RENA numbers, which are the ones that are mandated by the state. And so
Yes.
the
Is
state
RENA an acronym?
It is. I knew you were going
Okay.
to ask me
Oh,
that.
yeah.
David might have to get on.
Oh, David, can you tell me what RENA stands
It's just
for?
what we know-
RENA?
No, it's RHNA.
Regional Housing National
Yeah.
Authority, I think it is.
Yes.
Okay.
And so it's the numbers that the state has mandated housing that we build here in Los Gatos. And right now they have mandated that in the next 8-year cycle, the RENA runs in 8-year cycles,
Yeah.
that we build, I believe, 2,900 houses.
1993 units, and the 2040 general plan is proposing 3,737 units.
So we talked about this with Rob.
Yes.
With Rob Moore.
Yeah.
And part of his pushback on that number, because I think people, and due respect to Tony, I think that these numbers get batted around and our heads start to spin because is it 1,900 or 1,900 and whatever, or is it 3,700 or whatever?
Right now it hasn't been decided.
Well, and it's and Rob's point was it's not going to get done anyway. We're
Well-
going to miss those numbers no matter what.
So
So
here's-
to throw those large numbers out is really kind of a scare tactic because we're not even going to get to the 1,900. And so you start throwing out 3,700 and everyone goes, "Oh my God, 37." We're not going to even get to 1,900.
And
They
if you'll
have-
pardon me, the fire is also a scare tactic. I know it's something real that we need to prepare for, but all the building that goes on in the hills, that's inviting trouble. Not to mention making our mountains not as pretty as they were back in '65.
So I invite you to come to my house. Get in
we all
your
go?
car during school.
I'll get on my bike.
And no. It's not a scare tactic. I mean, tell the people out in Paradise that died.
Yeah, but
It's-
Tony, the traffic's so bad already. Honestly, from my perspective, you added another 2,000 houses here in Los Gatos. It can't get worse.
It can go. So in downtown, we have limited. We're a town. We're not a city. We
Yeah,
have
but I
limited
don't-
infrastructure. I agree with adding the units. I'm not saying not to. Okay, but the RENA numbers, but put them where there's better infrastructure for ingress and egress, not where we have Los Gatos Boulevard and Highway 9, and because that's it. And what University, Winchester. I mean, that's it. So
That
we need to go
has
to
a-
that side of town. That's less congested.
Just sitting here, and I'm not siding with you, Allie.
Yeah.
Don't. But
Sure.
that has
get excited. Why
that
not?
has a NIMBY ring to it.
Yeah, it does.
And I'm just saying,
that's
it just
not-
has
yeah.
a NIMBY kind of ring to it.
I'm just looking at
We
public
want the
safety.
houses, and this is what I'm finding, right? I told you this the other day. We've been having this conversation about housing for weeks, right? We taped the last segments, and everybody says they're pro-housing. Everybody says they're pro-housing, and what I'm learning is that that's just the thing you say now because you have to appear as though you're pro-housing, and then you go call your lawyer and have your lawyer sue the town to slow the process down, to get in the way, and to create obstacles so that no housing actually gets built. And all the while, so it's this idea of NIMBYs in YIMBY clothing. We've had this conversation many times.
That's a nice.
NIMBYs in YIMBY clothing.
Yeah. The challenge is with the RENA numbers. The state does not give us any funding for police, for fire, for schools. You take the North 40. They ran the traffic calcs using a remote town in Texas, which is a very different lifestyle than Los Gatos. They also said they generate 0.56 students per residence in the North 40. The schools, we don't really have. I mean, we're already busting at the seams in schools, and so it's a multifaceted problem. I'm not saying I have the answers. I'm saying we need to look
the
at
schools, I think, is a
holistically
problem.
the whole
No,
picture.
well, they were. The schools aren't busting at the seams anymore. Now they're actually having higher.
populations are dwindling.
Yeah.
Right.
Young
yeah. The
populations are
very
schools
dwindling.
are
much so.
losing students, and
When
I
you say
think
losing students, you mean populations are shrinking. It's not like we're
younger
losing students.
populations are
Right, but we're not
shrinking,
losing
and people
students
are
to other
leaving
districts.
California
And people
because
can't afford to
People
live in Los Gatos.
And the population's aging.
But when you
There's
worry
fewer people here with
about
younger children.
when you worry about things like an increased population bringing in more traffic, I'm a public transportation advocate, and I rode my bike here, right?
She did. I can vouch for that.
So we need more public transportation options. We need more people on bikes. These are the kinds of things that we're promoting. So that's why I would never come from from one area of downtown to another in my car unless I had a lot of things that I can't carry. We have that's my way of thinking outside the box. I don't have your education in housing, but I do think that's something we need to be considering in all this mix. And another thing is, when people are able to live closer to where they work, then or where they go to school, they're not clogging up all the streets, right? And if we could get some of the high schoolers to leave the car at home. I know it's you want to show off your new car. Do it once a week.
These
Take
kids,
turns. Take the
They're
bus.
so spoiled with everybody gets a car and a parking space. Come on.
That's why we bought on Johnson, so our daughters could walk to school. They didn't drive to
And
school.
all the other kids could park right outside your house.
on my street.
Yeah,
exactly. But
Would you would actually fight the state, or you'd appeal to the state on the RHNA numbers, even on the 1900?
yes,
You think that number is too high already?
Yeah.
I would like to see better studies done to assess, because living in the hills, I know it's not a scare tactic. There's a serious fire issue there. We have said grab
when
our
do we
bikes,
stop
don't
with
take
the
cars.
studies? At what point do the studies stop? And we listen. I got a big question, and maybe one of you can answer this. Because honestly, another study? Really? We need another study? Maybe.
Right.
But isn't there a state mandate, and are there consequences associated with that mandate? Like, if there's a deadline, what happens? Right? Like, this is MacGyver, right? And you got to get that paperclip and that gum out.
So here's the formula per the town of Los Gatos. Los Gatos sketched out projections for 2,763 units of new housing, 500 ADUs, and 475 projects already in the pipeline. So 3,737 units over the next 2 decades. So that is from the general plan from the town. So not
And you
numbers.
think we'll meet those numbers?
I think the ADUs will happen. That's SB 9. SB 10 is a whole different animal. That gives people the ability to put 8 units on a single family lot. I'd like to see us put a historic district around historic Los Gatos, and that would keep the town feel and culture. Like when you talk about the bungalow houses, that would prevent them from being torn down. If you want to add more space, go down, not up. As a homeowner, you'll save on property taxes. It's much cooler underground, a bit more expensive, but that cost is offset by the savings in property taxes. So I think there's a compromise, but I would like to see part of the historic downtown and
Preserved.
historic Los Gatos preserved.
And this is partly why people want to move here, because it's
Right.
quaint and charming, and it's
Right.
Los Gatos. I mean, that's part of what makes this town.
And Allie, do you agree with that? Like,
I would say, if you're going to tear down an old bungalow, then, build a multifamily unit, Victorian in its place.
Right.
Rather than, just around the corner from me, for instance, a 1-bedroom bungalow. I understand it'd be really hard for a family to live in a 1-bedroom bungalow, but do you need to turn that into, a 5-bedroom sprawling home that's going to house one family?
and you're in agreement on that. So
Yeah.
you're agreeing with that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's actually really.
I think we have actually sort of exited the era
Yeah.
of these massive McMansions.
And there is the
I
Mills
think that
Act.
the planet
I
can't
wish.
just can't. Oh, I know,
Yeah.
but I mean,
I hope you're
as
right.
as a species, I think we all have to kind of grab a hold of this idea that era is just coming to a close.
So again, go back to the NIMBY and NIMBY clothing. Where, for people who are arguing that, because we have to build some of these houses. All right, maybe 3,700 is a stretch, but where are you gonna build these houses in Los Gatos, and where do you suggest we do?
That's the biggest challenge. So back in the day, in 2007, I believe it was, I was in land development. I approached Mike Wasserman and said, "Can you help me, Mike? I want to get to the Yuki family.
The Yuki family being
the North 40 before it was in contract with Grosvenor."
Mm-hmm.
And my idea was to take the whole North 40 to Apple and to give them market rate, not a discount, give them the project, let them build housing around commercial for their work, even give them a bit of a height restriction on that location to put housing so people could bike to work in that community versus getting in cars.
So put a campus there.
A campus there.
A high-tech campus there with housing right on site.
With housing right on site. And ask Apple to pay for and build a school to implement their technology as proof of concept that Apple works in school systems as a model to disperse throughout the country. That was a huge opportunity. It's pretty fortuitous.
I just heard a couple of people's heads explode.
Yeah.
I think that's what I just heard in here. Did you guys hear that?
Yeah. but
listen, I'm not saying it's a bad idea.
I was early.
It's very progressive.
That is progressive, especially back then. But did you have any interest from Apple?
I was told by Mike, no, we don't want that. So I tried to put on the Los Gatos Center, where Chase is now. That was owned by two owners, and I wanted to put a 55 and older community there with 56 units, 2 buildings, take commercial from 30,000 to 45,000, doctor's office below, underground parking with an easement back to that 3-hour parking stall that we have that the town owns, and do a double decker so employees had a place to park, and then that would provide housing to 55 and older. So if you live on Glen Ridge, if you live on town, where do you go if you want to stay? There's not really anywhere to go.
Right.
That's a problem.
So the 55 and older need, I think, is real, and that's something that we can look at. So that was an example of somewhere that we could do to fill in some housing, but that's only 55 units.
Yeah. So you've come up with whatever solutions, which I love, because so often you sit down with people and they complain, and there aren't any solutions, right? But why, if there are so many creative people in Los Gatos, where's the hang up? How come none of this is getting done or even considered or discussed?
My personal experience, I used to live up the street on Johnson. I live down the street now. I bought a house across the street from me to tear down. And build new, a 2-story, my family house, with a basement underground. The house prior to buying it had already been deemed not historic, already been proved to be torn down. I bought it, the plans had expired. It took the town 18 months to approve my build. They didn't approve it because it was going to have a Spanish tile roof. So
Tony's launching into all these other topics.
Yeah.
But that's why they're not doing it, because the process to get approval, it takes a lifetime, and it's too much capital risk.
And this town does have a reputation for being really difficult to work with, and very staunch and sort of antiquated in their view of how architecture should look and how things should get approved.
That's what a lot of us used to think, and I think there was a time when that was the case. But now, every week I comb through, the upcoming meetings for the various, committees and commissions, and I look at all the agenda, and of course I can't go to all these meetings. But what I frequently see are requests to demolish pre-war housing. And I'll look at the addresses and I think, oh, that's a charming little place I pass every day on my dog walk. And, and I think it's so sad that people want to tear these down, whereas you can take some paint and make them look,
Right, but they're small and obsolete. I mean, it's essentially the problem is that somebody wants a more modern, well-built, and efficient house.
But you can build a house and make it bigger without, tearing it down.
Brian, if we had a committee in town that would actually go talk to current landowners, like the Los Gatos Lodge,
Yeah.
that would make a perfect conference center and housing units. I wanted to do a stem cell regenerative unit above there. Across the way, Alberta Way, that hole in the ground's been there for 2.5 years. And they would have taken housing, but the town wanted commercial. And instead of doing a mixed-use development to bring 10, 12 units at a time, chip away and disperse that housing need across town, we're missing that opportunity.
So why didn't mixed use get approved there? How did that get stalled or stopped? What happened? Do people come in and oppose it? And
it goes to what the parcel is allocated to be built on.
So there's
the general
zoning.
plan. There's zoning issues.
But doesn't the town have the ability to alter zoning?
A general plan amendment is a massive undertaking.
But even some of these things, Brian, some of these things
That's
are
it.
actually approved, and they actually fit the
Right.
They fit in
Right,
to
right,
the
but
rules
they
and have regulations, and they still don't get passed. Depending on how people feel about them.
Right.
Am I hearing? Oh,
No.
did you hear that?
Sounded like it was all,
I thought, is there wind in here? Okay, can I go back to a question I asked earlier? Catherine, I'm going to ask this of you.
Okay.
What's the consequence of not meeting this state-mandated housing requirement in the next 8 years?
Well, so the long and short of it is the threat from the government, state government, that if we do, it is a threat, although
Okay.
you're seeing it happening in other towns and cities around, is that if we do not build, then the state can, if a developer comes in and wants to build, then the town or city loses its rights. And so somebody could come in and build a 10-story.
So somebody from Sacramento comes in and says, put it over there.
Yes. I mean, that's a bit of a long process, but my whole thing that I always look at is like, I would so much rather be proactive and have the town decide, and this goes along with the North 40. Had the town actually, and I think you might have been on one of those committees opposing it all along, but I just believed with the North 40 that if we had worked together with the developer from the very beginning, we could have ended up with more affordable housing units there for sure.
I'm going to stand up for Tony here for just 1 second. I think that they were not necessarily opposing more housing units.
They tried to get rid of the parking garage. Parking garage, right?
It's a very complex. The North
It
40
is.
was very complex, and I think a couple of major things went wrong, and then a number of small things went wrong.
And then we have bait and switch in phase 2, which I warned about from the very beginning. Because you're correct, I was opposed to North 40 from a view standpoint. I just don't think it's a pleasant development look.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like town. But they're going to have a bait and switch on where they were saying it was going to be a hotel and commercial, which is good for revenue for the town. Now they're talking about 800-900 housing units and no commercial. And that stretch of land failed from a traffic calc. It was ranked F, and so that's something else. But
another great
Again,
topic, Tony.
It is a great topic. I just think
we just
that,
use Tony's sound bites to launch into these other topics.
This is when I'll go actually not directly to the town council, but a little bit to the town council. It is about leadership, and it's about being proactive rather than being reactive. And I meet with a lot of council members, weekly, or with all of them really weekly, and they actually complain about that too, about being reactive, and they'd rather be proactive on some of these topics. But
You
it's
say
like,
the members of the council would like
members
to
of the council.
be proactive.
Yes, but then you ask, okay, then why aren't you? And
That's
I
my
think
question
that's
is-
where you got to walk the talk. If you say
I
you're going to
feel
be
like this
proactive,
conversation's been going on for years,
Yeah.
and always it seems to end up with, we still need units like crazy. There's still this stick being threatened against us by the state, and we still don't have enough units.
right?
And so I don't know how it keeps ending up in that position of we want to, but for some reason we can't,
Yeah.
or we haven't.
Again, he's itching over here. I'm liking this, and he's like, I gotta talk. I gotta talk.
it's the parking lot behind Piece of My Heart.
Yeah.
The town bought, it was 6 or 8 units, and tore them down and made a parking lot. So they took 6 or 8.
Yeah.
It was perfect. It was middle income type housing, perfect for low income, perfect for teachers.
And historic.
It was affordable, and they took that down. They're proposing a parking structure. They can't find somebody to do it. That is a interesting location because you can walk to town, so you don't have to get in your car. And there are some people in town that have some great things coming. I'm not going to steal their thunder. Some great ideas, and it's related to live work.
Okay.
And if they execute on that, it's going to be a hugely positive thing.
These are developers that are going as of yet unnamed?
Not developers, but just town residents that have some ideas to bring some jobs into town, some collaboration, and some housing.
I got about 2 more minutes. Is there anything else? I'm going to close up with you too, Ellie, but
It's okay.
You're referencing other people in town, and I want to give you an opportunity, if you want, to fill us in on where you are with town and leadership.
Yeah. So I think I mentioned to Brian, I have a family and our daughters are grown now, and I've always participated in town government. I've served on LGF, active member of the Masonic Lodge. We actually founded the town of Los Gatos. We wrote the town charter. We were the first mayor. And being an officer of the lodge, I am considering running for town council. I haven't decided yet. That's a family decision between my wife Elizabeth and I. It's a lot of time to commit to that. Public service has always been in my soul, trying to make a difference. And so we'll see come July if that's the path I take. I do hope that we have town council members like myself. We don't have any political aspirations. I want people that don't have any conflicts of interest. I've seen the best of development and the worst of it. I don't favor massive development in town. I like our town culture and the hills. But I'd like to see candidates in the town that don't have conflicts of interest, spouses or relationships in town, or any political aspirations to go on to serve other roles, because then there's pay-to-play concerns. And so I'm hoping and asking other town residents consider serving and helping our town. I think we're at a crossroads, and I think with some bright minds we can come up with some creative solutions to fill the needs that we have for people that need workforce housing, again, which I'm a big advocate for. So we'll see if I fit in there and step in that role.
I got to say, with that answer, it seems like you're in a pretty good position to launch that.
Yes, I could.
Allie, I got about one more minute.
Are you going to announce your candidacy too?
No.
She's like, yeah.
On my plate.
After today.
Thank you. I thank you very much for this conversation, and I want to see Los Gatos progress more quickly, and both in terms of having housing for everyone of different racial, ethnic, economic backgrounds. I think that would make our wonderful town even better, and I'd love to share this place with even more people.
Yeah.
Excellent. I think that's a great sentiment. Again, massive subject. We really appreciate everybody tuning in and sticking with us and listening, because it is a big subject. I feel like we were able to drill down just a little bit more specifically this time, right?
I think
it's been good. I want to thank you, Allie, so much for coming in. This isn't, this is time. This is time out of your life to come and talk with us, and we really do appreciate it. And I'm hoping that PodCats LG is a platform where people in town can come to this show and start to learn more about what they need to learn, and become more sort of interested and active in their own
and be able to form opinions. I think it's people listening about.
And so this kind of transparent sharing I think is a big win for everybody. If and when you decide to run and you do get elected, or if you do get elected, do you think you'd be able to come back here to PodCats LG and chat?
100%, Brian.
Really?
I love the work that you guys are doing. Thank you so much. And
we want the council here. We want town. We want the town here. We haven't.
They're going to hold you to it.
Yeah, we're going to hold you. Yeah, exactly. When he's out there on the dais, he's going to be like, I don't know, Brian.
I'll make a deal. If that does happen, I would like to come back, and I'd like to have you do a part of a segment about fentanyl, because it's a real issue for kids.
Oh, gosh.
And familiesagainstfentanyl.com. Please go to the site, take a look, educate yourselves, and educate your kids. There's no do-overs with it. I've had 3 friends lose their children to it, and I'm just a big advocate for it. So if I do get elected, I will certainly come back and
even if you don't, we can come back and have that conversation.
I appreciate
the kids and drugs conversation is after we did the episodes last time about dispensary here in town. I mean, it's just these conversations carry over. It's like my whole life is about these conversations that we have here.
Yeah.
So it's a huge, massive subject.
Thank you.
Again, and I think that we should do everything we can to educate the children and the young people about the challenges that come along with drinking and using drugs. I mean, it's just not, whatever. It's not an easy subject. Anyway, Catherine, you're amazing. You're doing an amazing job. And go on to see the next one. We've got another segment coming up. And so please tune into the next segment for more conversation about housing in Los Gatos. All right?
All right.
Thank
Awesome.
you. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Come together right now. Hit the ground running, ain't even a discussion. Hold up. Come together right now. Ain't no time for sleep. All we gotta do is come together.